Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
Wake up at Holiday Inn Express to a can't-miss breakfast that's free with every stay. Count on all the hot, fresh coffee you need and an incredible breakfast buffet that has something for everyone, like eggs, cinnamon rolls, and even hot, fresh pancakes with all the toppings you crave. Next time, do yourself a favor and stay at a Holiday Inn Express with a can't-miss breakfast that's free with every stay. So, when you wake up at Holiday Inn Express, you'll wake up happy, a part of IHG Hotels and Resorts.
Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Hey y'all, it's me again, your girl, your host, Elena Grace, and thank you for listening to another episode of I've Been Thinking. I am coming at you from my new home, my new place right outside of Destin, Florida. So snaps for that. I am so excited. We are so happy to be here. If you are a Patreon subscriber, I'm going to be talking more about it in a Patreon exclusive video, just kind of like giving the down low. I've talked about it on the blog a little bit as well, but we're just so excited to be here. And frankly, I'm so excited that the move is over, that it's done. We're here. We are moved in. We're not totally unpacked. We moved on Saturday, what was it, like the 11th, I think? And we packed up our house right outside of Cincinnati, well, our apartment, put everything in the U-Haul, cleaned up, our families helped, and then we got on the road and drove for 12 hours. So we got to our new place. It was right after midnight, this time, Central Time. I'm in a new time zone now. And it was a whole entire thing. But we're here, we're moved in, and we are excited and doing new things already and just already loving it. So anyway, that's your life update from me. And that's why this episode is being recorded on Thursday when it comes out on Friday, because I have not had the ability, the time, any of the above to record this week. And finally I said obviously you guys and the podcast is a priority of mine. So I was like, I gotta pause everything. I have to do this because I've not missed an episode yet. And I'll be damned if I do it now. So we'll see when my first, break episode is. But it hasn't happened yet in almost 2 years, a year and a half of recording. So I am not going to do it now. Anyway, today we are kind of getting into the Christmas theme. And if you remember, if you have listened to the Halloween traditions around the world episode, I kind of ended up, and not even on purpose, because at first it didn't even click in my brain that I did that Halloween around the world episode when I was working on this one. And then I was like, oh, wait, I did that already. Well, it follows, it, checks out. So we're talking about Christmas traditions around the world. I thought this would be a really interesting, just kind of like way to look at some different traditions that we practice in the United States and how they cross over. Plus, I really wanted to do this because in next week's episode, which will be coming out on Christmas Eve, or maybe the day before as a little Christmas prezi to you guys, we're going to be talking about the history of Santa Claus and his many iterations around the world. So a lot of these things we're going to talk about today play into next week's episode too. So listen to this one and then make sure that you're subscribed, that you follow us, that you have, notifications on, whatever it is where you listen, so that you get next week's episode, because I'm going to be telling you guys next week why I still believe in Santa Claus. So get ready for that. 26 years old and I believe in Santa. But today, I'm going, like I said, to share with y'all some specific Christmas traditions from around the world, and I think these are super cool. So, buckle in. To begin with, we are going to Scandinavia. So, the Yule goat is a hugely important Swedish tradition, and the roots for the Yule goat are found in ancient Germanic pagan rituals and festivals. So, surprise, surprise, most Christmas traditions are actually founded in ancient pagan rituals. If you want to learn some more about just like that in general, last year's Christmas episode was actually about Christian holidays and pagan traditions. So, go back to about a year ago. And I forget what episode that was, but I'll link it in the show notes and in the blog post for today so you can find that pretty easily. But yeah, last year we talked more about pagan traditions and Christmas and other Christian holidays. So I think that's super interesting. Anyway, back to the point. The roots of the Yule goat specifically aren't super clear. But it's generally theorized that it's actually connected to worship of the Norse god Thor, the god of thunder, because his chariot was drawn by two goats. His flying chariot that he flew through the sky was drawn by two goats. So this then combined with the old idea that the last sheaf of grain that was bundled in the harvest was special, and then and was traditionally safe for Yule celebrations. So that kind of gave us the Yule goat as we see it today, which is traditionally made out of straw. Now, this idea connects to ancient indigenous Slavic beliefs that the Kolyada, or as we more commonly know it, the Yule, which is like a Germanic Celtic word, but in Slavic, it was Kolyada. Let me make sure I'm saying that right. Hold on. Okay, yeah, so based on what I found, it's basically Kolyada. So, the Kolyada is a festival that honors the god of the fertile sun and the harvest, who also happens to be represented by a white goat. So here, once again, we have it being tied into the harvest, which is grain and straw, etc., and also goats. So we have that recurring theme. Of further interest, the pagan Kolyada festivals traditionally also had a person dressed as a goat, like a person in like goat skins dressed up as a giant man-sized goat, which is kind of terrifying. And that person would be demanding presents as offering to the deities. So really interesting that demanding presents as an offering ties into this version of a Yule celebration. Now, as Christianity entered Scandinavia, 11th century records of Childermas, or Childermas, I can't do Scandinavian accent. It just sounds like a caricature, and I'm not Will Ferrell, so I can't get away with that. Anyway, but that's Christmas, okay? Childermas, or Christmas. So 11th century records of their celebration of Christmas have St. Nicholas leading around a man-sized goat. So we're pulling in St. Nicholas, and then we have the man-sized goat that we're carrying through the ancient traditions. Of course, I forgot to turn my phone off. What more could I do in this episode? Symbolizing St. Nicholas, and thus Christmas, and thus Christ, control over the devil, because Satan is also traditionally associated with goats, which I am fairly 98% certain is due to the fact that a lot of pagan religion, like a lot of pagan traditions, have goats being a prevalent character. So like we saw Thor, who is not a malevolent spirit. He's also not an inherently benevolent spirit, but that's a discussion for another day. But Thor, he's drawn by goats. A lot of pagan witchcraft calls upon a goat image, which I can't speak a ton to, but that's not inherently Satan. So, like, it's just really interesting how the image of Satan is associated with, or the idea of Satan is associated with goats and their prevalence in pagan and various other religions, because, I mean, obviously that's an instance of Christianity trying to demonize images that are important to religions and celebrations and rituals that are not approved by the church. Anyway, so there are a variety of other theories and traditions that are associated with the Yule goat, from its popularity as a lighthearted Yuletime prank. So they will like play pranks, and if you get a Yule goat placed in your house, you have to find it and then put it in somebody else's house to prank them and do it without getting caught, right? To the Yule goat's ties to caroling and playing a very similar role to the Krampus in other Scandinavian Nordic traditions. So, in addition to that role that the Yule goat plays, medieval Scandinavian depictions of their traditional version of basically Santa Claus see him being drawn in his sleigh by goats. So once again, pretty likely a reference to Thor being drawn by goats in his sleigh or chariot through the sky. So Winnie's being super nosy, and we have hardwood floors now, so you can hear her click, 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 click. So I'm sorry. Anyway, so we've got all of these traditions that are following through and carrying over. And I just think that's so fascinating. The way it interweaves like a little web, like a little, what's the word? Tapestry to come together and create this thing that we know today. Now, in the 60s, this is where it gets wild, okay? The Yule goat tradition was given a whole new life when it was made into a giant straw goat, more than 42 feet high, 23 feet wide, and it weighs over 3.6 tons. Now, what do they do? So it came from, they would make small straw goats, and that's what they would use to prank people with. That they would have like small ones to decorate the tree with. They would hide it in the tree, kind of like we do with a Christmas pickle sometimes, like that kind of thing. But giant goat in the middle of the town square. What do they do with it? They just decorate it with red ribbons and make them look pretty. Do they, like, what's the point? Do they burn him, like at Burning Man or Guy Fawkes Day? Nope. They actually send people to prison if they do burn it. It's just a cool thing they do for fun. It's like a Christmas tree in the town square, but instead it's a giant straw goat. I love it. It's absolutely wild. Blows my mind. I think it's hilarious. Now, a more traditional, maybe a little bit, celebration can be found in the Filipino city of San Fernando. They hold a giant lantern festival every year with the lanterns symbolizing the Star of Bethlehem. So this is one that it kind of follows with the tradition of Christmas lights, right? Each lantern or parol is made up of thousands of spinning lights, and they all come together and illuminate the sky. So because of the massive nature of this festival, the city has actually been given the nickname the Christmas capital of the Philippines, which I think is super cool. The tradition is rooted actually in an activity known as lubenes, where lanterns originally measured about 2 feet in diameter, and they were created from bamboo and other local materials. So in the 9 days before Christmas, they were traditionally paraded about in a procession. Because if you don't know, the Philippines was actually a Spanish colony. For the most part, most of it was a Spanish colony. So that's why the Philippines speaks kind of a version of Spanish, and a lot of their city names are going to be like San Fernando, things like that, Spanish influence. So they have a very strong Catholic influence. So that's why this is such a big celebration there. Whereas in a lot of Asian and Southeast Asian countries, it might, Christianity just really isn't the same. So anyway, in the 9 days before Christmas, the parols were paraded about in a procession. It was like a big thing around the city. And then before midnight mass on Christmas Eve, the lanterns were all brought together to the town church to show them all off. Then we see the tradition evolving over the years, with the lanterns becoming larger and larger and more intricate, and it became this cooperative effort of each resident contributing to the construction of their neighborhood's lantern. So these came to become symbols of unity and pride for the people contributing to them, which I think is a really beautiful story for the beginning of such a stunning tradition. Plus, like, what more can you ask of a Christmas tradition that it is a symbol and a celebration of unity and togetherness and pride and beauty, you know? That's a lot of the things that Christmas and Yuletime carry with them, even from the ancient pagans: togetherness, unity, celebration, love, pride in your community, that kind of thing. And it carries through even with the advent or the introduction of Christianity into those traditions. So I think it's really cool that it all ties together like that. But y'all know me, I'm also, Winnie's got a squeaky toy. Y'all know me, I'm also a massive hopeless romantic. So there we go. Now, speaking of hopeless romanticism, the Japanese actually have some super fun traditions for Christmas. Now, with about 1% of Japan being Christian, it's not a national holiday. It's not at all the same way it is here in the States or in a lot of European countries, but a lot of people still celebrate, just kind of because. Like, why not? I mean, we celebrate St. Patrick's Day and Cinco de Mayo in the U.S., and it's like a huge thing. It's bigger here than sometimes it is in the country of origin. So, they kind of have taken it on. They think it's fun to celebrate as well. They still might work or whatever. But a lot of families will order Kentucky Fried Chicken on Christmas Day. And that is their Christmas celebration. This is because of a wildly popular KFC marketing campaign back in the 70s called Kentucky for Christmas. A lot of people will actually order like months in advance to ensure that they get their chicken, which is crazy. And then grocery and convenience stores will also have pre-fried, ready-to-go chicken in stock just in case you prefer that, or you don't get your pre-order in time, or you don't want to wait in the sometimes like 2 and 3 hour long lines to get your KFC on Christmas Day. Like, it's a whole ass thing. And thank goodness that the grocery stores have it, because I would literally forget to pre-order and everybody would be mad. So that would literally be saving my life. Now, like I said, speaking of hopeless romanticism, Christmas in Japan is also a little bit more targeted for lovers, more so than families. I don't really know exactly why this is, but it's actually a pretty popular time to spend time together, like doing romantic things, going out and looking at Christmas lights or going on a special date to somewhere. And gift giving is much smaller than it is elsewhere in the world. Sometimes couples exchange gifts. Kids will still sometimes, or maybe a lot of the time, receive gifts as well. And some families do believe in and perpetuate Santa Claus. But conceptually, he's quite a bit different than in Western countries. Like, he still might sneak into the home and bring gifts, that kind of thing. But he's kind of more of a benevolent spirit than he is like a physical being. So I think that's pretty interesting. Now, by the way, like I said, going to look at Christmas lights, really they're more of winter illuminations because Christmas, like I said, isn't really a thing. But the lights will stay up through the season, and they're insanely popular. They're, like I said, obviously not inherently connected to Christmas, but for a lot of people, especially expats living in Japan, the two do tie together. And a lot of cities have absolutely huge, incredibly famous light illuminations that draw tourists from all over. I really cannot recommend enough that you guys go check out Her Atlas, HERATLAS, all one word, on YouTube. She is one of my favorite YouTubers. She lives in Japan and she has posted videos of them before. They are incredible, absolutely incredible. I'll post a link to her page into those videos in the blog post for today, because they are absolutely stunning, and you guys just have to get an understanding of what I'm talking about. It's so good. Now, again, Christmas trees also aren't a common, popular tradition in Japan, but a lot of businesses and shopping centers have actually taken on the tradition, putting up big, humongous, stunning trees and decorating them all beautifully. Now, I don't know this like for a fact, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they were inspired by the incredible aesthetics of like New York City, London, Amsterdam, like other huge metropolitan shopping hubs around the world, and how beautiful they are decorated for the holiday. And Tokyo, Kyoto, like those other cities probably want to be included in that and want to share in that beauty, if not the like religious part of the celebration. So I think that's super cool. Like I said, I don't know if that's the case for sure or not, but that's my theory. I don't blame them either way. I don't care why they're doing it. I think it's beautiful. So anyway, now back to Europe. The Danish traditionally celebrated Jul or Jol, which is spelled with a J, but it's pronounced basically like Yule. Before the onset of Christianity. I'm laughing at how I'm doing that, and I wish I was taking a video of this so you could see me going, Yule. Anyway, that was an ancient Danish tradition celebrating the brightening of the days after the solstice. So it was usually done around or at the solstice. Today, Yule begins with either the start of the Advent or December 1st, and homes are decorated with characters called nis to provide protection, and families will dance around the tree and sing carols to celebrate. Like I said, Yule is originally an ancient Norse tradition related very much to the Germanic Yule. And the root of the word itself is debated, but it is a cognate of alternate names for Odin. So that's pretty interesting that it is the same basically as some of Odin's names. So take that with what you will. But Yule also carries with it the tradition of Yule ale and drinking throughout the season. And this is so important to the celebration of Yule that the runic calendar is even marked with drinking horns, one upturned so that it's full to symbolize when the beer should be brewed by, and then another one that's upside down to symbolize when it should be drunk by. Like, that's hilarious. They say it's got to be brewed by this point so you can start drinking, and you better be finished with all the Yule ale by this day. That's really funny. Now, this tradition was originally to honor the Aesir, which like the gods and the spirits, friends and kinfolk, the ancestors, all of that good stuff. It's a hot mess, guys. I hope you can hear Winnie's alligator toy that's as big as she is, and it makes a croaking sound, and it's her favorite. So this tradition of drinking to the memory and to the idea followed through even after the Christianization of Denmark and Norway, but it changed a bit so that instead of drinking to the old gods and the spirits and friends and ancestors, it was changed to drinking in honor of Christ and the Virgin Mary instead. So I think it's interesting how they were just like, we're going to keep the tradition, but switch it up just a little bit. Pretty common in a lot of Christian Christmas traditions. Now, this is also where we see the mischievous but gift-bearing Nis come into play that I had mentioned earlier. The Nis are bearded ancestral spirits from the Norse mythological traditions. You might recognize these guys because we typically know their image as gnomes. So their tradition was eventually integrated with the figure of Sinterklaas to give a modern day interpretation of Santa Claus, even down to the tradition of leaving a bowl of rice porridge and butter out for the Yule spirits of the Nis. That kind of evolved into leaving an offering of cookies and milk for Sinterklaas. So really, really interesting how they all tie together, guys. I'm telling you, you've got to listen to next week's episode because it is wild. Now, finally, our last tradition we're going to talk about today. In Mexico, the Christmas season begins in December with a whole celebration reenacting the journey of Mary and Joseph. So it begins in like mid-December with a whole celebration reenacting the journey. And then they also put on what they call pastoreas or shepherd's plays to tell the Christmas story. So Los Posadas is the reenactment of the journey of Mary and Joseph, basically. And Los Posadas translates to like the inn in English. So thus it's Mary and Joseph trying to find an inn to give them shelter for the night. Now, like I said, this usually begins around mid-December, and each night children will usually go out door to door singing carols and asking if there's room in the inn, which I think is just absolutely precious. Like, what a beautiful way to commemorate that. It's really cute, really sweet. And today, a lot of the time, there will afterwards, after the caroling, singing, whatever you want to call it, and the like going around reenacting that searching for a room, a party will be held at the end of each night to continue the celebration, because why not? Now, at these Los Posadas parties, it's pretty typical to find a piñata. Piñatas are actually super common at a wide variety of different events and celebrations in Mexico, but specifically for Christmas, they will often have spikes around the outside of the piñata representing the 7 deadly sins, which I think is just super interesting. Like, why? I don't know. I don't understand that entirely, why you're doing the 7 deadly sins at Christmas, but it does give a super fun, festive look to the piñata. So, whatever. I vibe with it. Also, sidetrack. Every time I say or read the word piñata, I think of this episode of Bob's Burgers where blah, 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 like the stuff's happening. But they're like talking to this side character and she goes, okay, I think we're done here. And the kids are like, what? And she was like, oh, no, not you. And pulls a paper mache piñata that they thought she was just like building, but pulls it out and her kid is underneath it. And they all go, ah. And she's like, in this house, we make piñatas of ourselves. And the kids are like, what? Anyway, I just think of that scene every time I read the word piñata now. Moving on. Oh, also, I'll say this. At my next birthday, I want a piñata. We're going to put that into the universe. And also, Allison and Taylor and Adam, y'all better be listening. Okay. So anyway, at these parties, you might also find yourself drinking ponche, which is like the equivalent of a warm mulled fruit wine. Or you'll have rompope, which is like a perfectly spiced eggnog made of strong rum. I hope I pronounced those correctly because, frankly, I speak some Spanish, but I did not look up the pronunciation of those. Yeah, so we're just going to roll with that. I don't have the attention span to look those up right now, so let me know if I said it wrong. I don't care. Like, I care if I said it wrong. I don't care if you tell me I said it wrong, as long as you're nice about it. Now, additionally, in Mexico, the culture and the Mexican people just in general is still heavily religious. So their celebration of Christmas is not quite as secular as it tends to be in the States. So nativity scenes are super, like a huge deal, and they're super elaborate. And I think it's really interesting because it reminds me of the crazy attention to detail that they put into the Day of the Dead celebrations, and then like multiply that because they're celebrating baby Jesus' birth. So I just think it's super cool and super interesting that it's such a big deal to have intricate nativity scenes and also intricate nativity plays or shepherd's plays. So I think that's very, very interesting and just really neat also that they put so much effort and thought into that aspect of the celebration. And then I think it's also cool that they don't, like in displays of the nativity, they don't typically include the baby Jesus inside the manger until Christmas Eve. That's just a fun little fact. That's kind of tradition to not put him in there until the eve of his birthday celebration day, because it's not actually his physical birthday. And then finally, I think this is really neat. I just think the Mexican celebrations of Christmas in general are neat, and all of these celebrations are really cool. But in Mexico, as well as in Spain, parts of Spain at least, and some other parts of like Spanish colonies, some families will celebrate Three Kings Day. Now, even though on Christmas Eve, some families might celebrate Santa visiting, the Three Kings will pay a visit in January, like I said, on the night before Three Kings Day to leave some candy and maybe some small treats. Now, to celebrate Three Kings Day, which is actually apparently the most popular of Mexico's Christmas traditions, families will gather together and enjoy rosca de res, which is an oval-shaped bread full of fruits and with a baby figurine baked in. Now, what does that sound like to my fellow Americans? That is a king cake. Rosca de res, a cake of the kings, a king cake. It literally means the same thing. And that's interesting because even though we think of New Orleans as being a French colony, it was briefly owned by the Spanish. So a lot of those same traditions will follow through and be co-opted. So I just think that's super interesting that it's essentially the same. Now, to round out the holiday season, because it is an extended situation in Mexico, February 2nd is called La Candelaria, or Candlemas, and is typically celebrated with a tamale party. The person who got the baby in their rosca de res, in their king cake, on Three Kings Day is traditionally supposed to host the tamale party, and it's basically a huge blow-up banger to celebrate the end of the holiday season and all of the festivities. I just love that the whole thing is just, and I feel like this is just very on brand for Mexican culture and just like celebration after celebration. So, yeah, I hope that you guys have loved learning about Christmas celebrations around the world. I hope that it has taught you a little something this Friday. And I also hope that maybe it gives you a little inspiration for how to add in some new celebrations or maybe change things up in your home if that's what you're looking for, in your traditions, in your holiday rituals. I, again, hope you guys loved this episode. I had so much fun putting it together and writing it. Make sure that you check out our Patreon, patreon.com/I've Been Thinking Pod, and subscribe to that. I have actually updated the different subscriptions, so go check it out. There's all kinds of ways for you to contribute and help out the pod, and also to get extra and early content. Make sure you follow wherever you listen so you get notifications. Follow us at I've Been Thinking Pod on Instagram. Check out our Twitter at Been Thinking Pod, and check out today's blog post at I'veBeenThinkingPod.com for sources and for links. Thanks, guys, so much for listening and being here. I love you. Merry Christmas, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
New on Curiosity Stream.
I'm James Burke. I'm going to take you on a journey through time.
James Burke's visionary series returns, reimagined for our time.
Now, this is all uncharted territory.
The Washington Post hails Burke as one of the most intriguing minds in the Western world. The New York Times raves he careens from one great moment in history to another.
Where do we want to go from here?
Experience all new Connections.
So what's the next connection?
With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at CuriosityStream.com.